This is Andrew Hada from Nothing Ventured Media. I want to tell you about all the feature films we've made and how you can see them right now. The last one is a zombie drama about how a pandemic and isolation could drive a group of people mad. When the virus hits, John finds himself alone and scared until he meets Michael, his protector. But when Karina, another survivor, enters the mix, everything that John and Michael knew will be turned on its head. The last one's a zombie virus movie that's somehow even more relevant today. Plus, it has zombies. Check it out. Borderland is a mexploitation film about living in El Paso. When Sarah finds herself in debt to the cartels, she has until sunrise to find some missing monies with the help of her executioner. Borderland is a true midnight movie and a lot of fun. The documentary Humble Spirits tells the story of the Hahn family, including champion Jennifer Hahn from El Paso, Texas. The entire Hahn family has grown up in the combat sports and has helped shape who they are both in and out of the ring. Humble Spirits, A Family of Fighters, is the perfect documentary for boxing fans of all ages. Finally, The Empty Space, winner of multiple awards, including the Sacramento Horror Film Festival's Best of the Fest, is a cosmic horror about Amy Andrews, who's dealing with anxiety and depression after a violent attack that killed her husband. As she tries to find herself, she starts to lose her grasp on reality. Or could it be something much more sinister? The Empty Space is full of twists and turns, with Grace DeWilder of Rue Morgue magazine calling it a powerful film full of excellent performances by practically every cast member. All of Andrew Hada's movies are available to rent or buy on streaming services such as Tubi, Amazon, and many other places. And if that's not enough for you, Hada Films is home to all of our short films. So take a look around and see what you like. Spend your day with Hada Films and Nothing Ventured Media. Now, let's start the bomb squad. Merry Christmas. I just realized I was supposed to bring a hat, and I completely forgot. That's why I have hat hair.
Oh my god.
But yes, welcome to the Christmas edition. It's Christmas Eve. To you, we're speaking in
Yeah.
Japan. We're visiting. It's three ghosts, but they're all Christmas past because we don't pay attention to our boss.
Right.
So we're
Sorry.
visiting you to remind you
We're
that,
warning you about middle age.
yeah, we're warning
Yeah.
you about horror
Stretch
films.
more when you're young.
hmm
I don't stretch at
Ghost
all.
of living in the
I
Christmas
don't have those
present.
problems. So just go to the gym.
You know, your
Yeah.
hair actually looks like it's disheveled, like the new Clark Kent. So
I am constantly
Yeah.
compared to Clark Kent and Superman, like to the point where it's kind of annoying. But
well,
at
that's
this
two
point,
different guys. I'm talking
Right.
about the reporter Clark Kent, not
well, that's why, because I'm
not
always
Oh,
like,
not the
Superman.
man.
wait, you mean I look like Clark Kent and Superman? How they look so different?
Just Clark
You-
Kent.
Obviously, he's not wearing his glasses, so how is he Clark?
Yeah, like how could that be anyone?
Yeah.
But yeah, guys, go watch the new Superman trailer.
I've seen
Today,
clips on Reddit silently. I've seen
yeah,
silent Reddit clips.
go watch the trailer or go to Reddit where they're complaining about every aspect of the trailer as if it's the full movie.
Does the trailer look
Well,
good?
it
I
looks all
actually
the trailer.
the music really got me. I'm gonna say I did finally watch
Okay.
it yesterday, and I was like, oh, I love the Superman music.
The trailer looks bad, or the trailer is bad, but the movie looks good, if that makes sense. It's not
Yeah,
a
Okay.
bad
Okay.
trailer, but
You know,
it's
I feel like
mostly
I feel like
because, oh,
the
go ahead.
music always makes me think of like a Six Flags Dallas, like Six
Oh
Flags
yeah,
over Texas, and I'm like, or San Antonio rather, and that's a good feeling. That's a nice
yeah, that's
feeling.
a very American feeling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
But
all I
yeah,
got on Superman.
yeah, it's a cool trailer. That's our thoughts on it. We'll start doing trailer reviews too, guys.
Yeah,
Um, but today on Christmas Eve, we're taking you down to another Christmas classic, 1974's Black Christmas, which is heralded as the first slasher. It's not really. It might be the first American slasher. I think like Peeping Tom probably marks the first official
I saw a
slasher.
lot of Peeping Tom in
Oh,
this.
yeah.
Yeah, then there's a
Yeah,
apparently that was
totally.
the original
100%.
trope, was a lot of Peeping Toms. Of course, directed in 1974 by Bob Clark, who would go on to direct another Christmas classic, A Christmas Story, almost like
Yeah.
a few years after this. He did this, then he did Porky's, that he did A Christmas Story.
That's
And the
It
insane.
funny
is funny.
the
Yeah.
reason I'm telling you guys this is when you look at Black Christmas, if you watch it and you haven't watched it yet, or if you have watched it, think about their clothes and realize that Bob Clark didn't dress them in A Christmas Story to look like the 50s. That's just how he dresses everyone all the
Right.
time.
Yeah, yeah.
Everyone looks like they're in the 50s.
I
I know. We were
Especially
watching this
the
last night,
sorority
and
mom.
Leslie was
Oh, go
like, "Yeah,
ahead.
this is the guy that did Christmas Story," and I was just like, "A person directed A Christmas Story? Like, it's like such a big fucking movie that it's like
That is
that movie just
true.
materialized out of nowhere, and it was just
And
like, this is what we do in America for Christmas. It's
I kind of
crazy,
think the same thing where it's like, wait, Bob Clark directed other movies? Like I thought he
right?
just did. Like you
right.
just make that classic and then you never do anything again.
He must have made
Um,
like $1 billion off of like reruns and stuff. Like,
I know.
that's so
He's-
insane.
I mean, having Porky's Black Christmas and A Christmas Story, it's just all residual checks. Good job, Bobby.
Yeah,
You did
you
it.
did it.
Oh, he did Porky's too.
He's the
Yeah.
real Bob Clark that we care about. Wait, was the other guy
Yeah.
named Bob Clark?
Oh yeah,
I
what
know.
he did do Porky's. Yeah,
Yeah.
man,
But-
he had complicated ideas about women. I'll tell you that much.
I mean, I don't know. I thought Josh was a feminist, but according to what he just said, he might hate them. But this movie stars Olivia Hussey. Oh, well,
Mhm.
Josh, calm down, all right?
Yeah, this
Any
isn't
more
The,
big
the
grade
name
literature
did give me
class.
pause. I did not know that was a
It also
famous
stars
actress.
Margot Kidder, who plays Lois Lane. A connection.
Oh my god, that's why we were talking about the trailer.
That's how we were talking.
That's-
We were
that's
just
the reason.
rambling
There's
nonsense.
logic here, guys.
Not just
Don't worry.
tangents based on what we're thinking about.
And of
You know.
course, starring Andrea Martin, who plays Phil, and then the late great John Saxton, who can only play a police officer in any movie he's ever in, unless he's with Bruce Lee. Then he gets to play. He's still playing kind of a police officer in that movie, for being honest. Enter
Yeah.
the Dragon.
He's such a French noir looking kind of guy. Like he just like
Yeah.
Yeah.
steely cool. Just like that's who I want to be. That's who I want to be.
Oh my god! So I've seen this movie quite a bit, and it just hit me that Keir Dula, the boyfriend playing Peter, is the guy from 2001: A Space Odyssey
Totally.
in
Oh.
a very different role. He's
Very
still
different
yelling
role.
at someone.
He's
But
he's
he's
still
in the
unsettling,
right
but
Yeah. He's still being
So-
judged by higher forces that make him go a little crazy.
But William, why don't you? I realize that I like Josh's tangent so much that I made him do the last two. So William, you're up.
Okay. Black Christmas is about a sorority house that is receiving obscene phone calls. And these girls are about to go away for the holidays. The holidays are coming, and they're trying to figure out who is calling them. And then all of a sudden, everyone starts getting murdered. And we're just trying to find the bad guy, find the creep before everyone dies.
Yeah,
Simple.
that's a good description. And then I do want to add, so like if you haven't seen this movie again, you should have the disclaimer that I don't think movies should be judged based on when they were made, but I think important context is available. Like I said, this movie is one of the first issues of slash movies, especially in America. So it kind of has that feel where like they didn't know how to make slasher movies yet. So
Yeah.
some of it is a slasher movie. Some of it just feels like there's a lot of tangents. It makes sense if you're looking at this like a drama, but
Right.
in the terms of the slasher movie, you're like, why are we following this character for so long?
Yeah, the
So when
conventions
you're
are not there. A lot of the conventions are like
Yeah.
missing. Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of conventions are being invented as we see.
Totally.
So it's an interesting movie to watch historically, but
that's the weird thing to me though is like because like you said, it's like if you watch Peeping Tom, you see a lot of the same kind of like half setup and kind of like structure and a lot of POV shots and stuff, but it's also like that was 14 years earlier.
Right.
It's weird
right.
that the genre was like the exact same like kind of infancy for like over a decade, you know? It's
Right.
crazy.
It hadn't really picked up as much to be evolved.
if you think about it, Blair Witch is 1999, and then Paranormal Activity, which is really where found footage like goes crazy,
Yeah.
was like 2004. So it takes a while for the genre to really
Kinda catch
get a
on.
hold,
Yeah.
Yeah.
People to kind of figure out the
Get
format,
that.
get comfortable with it.
Yeah. But speaking of the story, what did you guys think of this movie?
I mean,
Is
I
this your
was
first
like,
time watching it?
it was my first time watching it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was great. I thought it was like really inventive, and I kind of like I really liked that it felt like a drama, and it was just like
Yeah.
you could like see the fledgling slasher stuff happen, but like surprisingly, like I guess that's kind of a mean thing to say, not really surprisingly, but like all the characters were great, and like all the performances were cool. Like it wasn't just like teen melodrama. It was like there was like this. I don't know. All the characters just seemed realistic to me and like interesting
Yeah.
to follow. And so whenever they
I
started dying, it was like, yeah, this is just a real
Yeah,
movie where people are dying.
yeah, it does a good job of like being a drama, and I think
Hmm.
that is definitely where I was like, oh yeah, this is like a real movie, not just like to be garbage, you know.
Right.
I will push back a little bit that all the performances are great, but all the characters, especially Margot Kidder's annoying ass
Which one
sorority
is she?
girl,
Oh, is she
is
Barb?
she
yeah, she's Barb.
Yeah.
She
she
is like
she's
so mean and tired of everyone.
I
she's the
know.
like,
I
come
know.
on, man, yeah.
I
Yeah,
never
Uh,
really know
at
why.
the
They never really
beginning,
explain like why
no, but I
Barb's so
kind of like
pissed.
there's the kind of like there's the one with the perm and the big nerd glasses who's just
yeah,
like the scared one, and everyone's kind of a trope, but like they also don't they like treat the trope seriously in a weird way. Like I mean, we'll get into the plot in a second, but it's kind of like the first death happens really quickly, and then the next one does not happen for like a long
Yeah.
time, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of buildup of just like people like living their lives, and you're like, oh, this is kind of like a cool structure which you would not see in like most horror movies.
well,
Right.
and I
Yeah.
think what works about this, and it might have been because they didn't realize they were tropes yet, is because like they have one of the characters who's like the virgin, and like that's funny because of what happens to the virgin, you know, and how it becomes a bigger trope.
Yeah.
Like the like super religious virgin, then you have like the kind of loose woman, and you have like the main character who's kind of like in between. But in this movie, and I think the reason it works is because they don't treat them as tropes; they treat them as character points.
Right.
Like
Right.
Kidder makes fun of the religious girl because she like calls her a forever virgin or something,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's like that kind of thing where like I think tropes are there, but they also like tropes and stereotypes even like we follow their stereotypes for a reason. I think the reason that they get called out is when you just kind of add them and don't really play with it as a character trait. You play
Hmm.
with it as a trope, and that's why it doesn't work. In this one, it does because of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's get into a little bit more of the story. So it's a sorority house. A lot of the teens have left, or not teens, college girls. Like a lot of college girls have left because it's Christmas break. These are
Hmm.
just a couple who are either gonna leave a little later or might just be staying for the holiday.
Right.
They've been getting teen phone calls, and then there's also and we also like they establish that there's a killer pretty quickly because they have someone outside the house using the POV camera, and I think this is one of the first instances where you actually hear them breathing. So it's like the camera is a person
Right.
in this
Right.
movie. It's just not a camera. And I think, and then we find out that the main character, who also has the thickest like Australian accent ever, Olivia Hussey, and
Dude,
like
her
they
accent
don't
is so
take it
crazy.
away
Yeah.
because everyone looks all
I thought she was British. I was like, she's
Same. Yeah.
suppressing something, you
Right.
know.
Right.
But
Not very well.
whatever.
and she finds out that she's pregnant, and she kind of wants to get or she does want to get an abortion, and she's like scared to tell her boyfriend, who is the meanest person in the entire world.
Yeah. Yeah.
But she, so like, and again, I kind of going back to it being a drama. I do like that, and I do like that. Nowadays there is that huge thing of like, why are you making this horror movie political? This movie is so political without even trying. Like, he's
Right.
having an abortion.
Yeah.
One of my
Oh,
favorite
right.
scenes
Right.
is like at the very beginning, they're all having a party, and then they get this phone call and they answer it, and you hear the guy like on the other end, kind of making these obscene noises and kind of like being gross, calling them pigs.
It was
making pig noises.
unsettling. It was a pretty obscene phone
And
call. Jesus
it goes
Christ.
over their face,
Yeah, it's close
and
ups.
it's so genius because they're not scared, they're
Yeah.
not annoyed even, they're just like so used to it that it's just kind of this like
Yeah.
reassurance of how ugly the world is to
Right.
women.
Totally. Yeah.
And it's such a smart move to make, like, not even being sickened by it. It's just so tiring that this is how ugly the world is.
Mhm.
And I think like they're not, and I don't think Bob Clark put it in there because he was like, oh, I'm gonna make a feminist statement. He was saying like this is the world that we live in, and this is a movie I'm trying to make. And I think that elevates Black Christmas, and it's kind of why it's still memorable all these years
Right,
later.
right. I think that was the scene, like that shot that exactly you're talking about was the moment where I was like, this is gonna be sick. Like this is gonna be a really good
Yeah,
movie because this is I was not expecting this level
Yeah.
of like intimacy, which is like kind of what it sparks. It kind of like you like going so close to their face, like that's obvious that that's an intimate shot, but like doing that at the beginning of a '70s slasher is like so unexpected, and it's like sensitive in like a way that a lot of movies aren't. Like it's not very exploitative, even though it's about this crazy stuff going on.
Yeah, you would think like a sorority like setting would be very like, oh, they're gonna like do like all sorts of like exploitation stuff, but not really.
Yeah,
no,
Very very surprising.
Yeah.
it's funny
yeah.
how little they like. There's no like nudity. There's not a lot of like scandalous stuff. It's just being at a sorority.
right.
I also gotta say, I would not. They really don't hang up for like 3 minutes.
Oh, I
I
know.
don't think
they
I
listen
would
to
have
it
listened to
forever.
that guy make like animal noises and scream the like
Yeah,
slurs at the phone for 3. I would be like, all right, I get it.
Yeah.
It's not like Ghostface where you're having a conversation.
right.
So,
But then when they ended though, whenever Barb is finally like, go away or whatever, and he like goes from saying like picky, picky, picky to I'm gonna kill you. It's like that switch is just like I felt that. I was
That's
like, oh my God.
it's such a good and he's like the whole time he's like he's making this weird noises. He kind of he's making two different distinct voices, and then right before he hangs up, he drops all pretense. He's just like, "I'm gonna kill you,"
Yeah.
and then he hangs up, and it's so like because it is that because Barb also says at one point she's like, "Oh, I deal with 3 of those guys living in New York
Right,
like
right.
every month,"
Mhm.
and it's like even her getting shaken by it is kind of telling. And so yeah, just that one scene kind of sets up, and then we also have we find out pretty quickly that he's hiding in the attic. He found a
Mhm.
way into the house. They make a point, another good smart move where they're like, that door's always broken, I'm gonna call someone, and then like
Oh,
they don't
right,
even show him
right,
coming in,
right.
you just know that he's broken in. And so he's in the attic the whole time. So I do like that the level of threat is like always at the top, you know.
Yeah, kind of
It's
like
always
watching them from
hilarious to
above in a
puzzle
way.
movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think it's good. And like so then so they the first murder is religious virgin, which again like that's going against a trope that hadn't been invented yet, but I think that that's also pretty cool. And then like kind of like what Josh was saying, they're like she hears something, she's like in her room packing, getting ready to leave,
Mhm.
and then she hears something in the closet and she's like, who's there,
Yeah,
who's there,
yeah,
and she keeps getting closer. It would have been like, who's there, and then the next thing would have been like, hey, I think there's someone in my room.
yeah,
Like I would have
yeah.
been in the kitchen already.
I'm
right.
not trying to.
Let's call the cab. There's someone up there.
Right, they don't know they need to
Um,
run away from every noise in a horror film yet, and neither do
right,
audiences.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but then after that, it kind of becomes this kind of mystery of what happened to her. We know what happened to her, but what happened to her, what's going on. And like the dad comes because he's there to pick him up. But like, and just like in real college, like most people are like, maybe she went to class, maybe she went to this party, maybe she went with her
right, right.
boyfriend, you know?
She could be
we
anywhere.
we also we should say to, and this is also kind of one of those like, and again I was like, I don't know if they're doing tropes because do these tropes exist yet, but right after the murder you get a call from the other girl's boyfriend Peter,
Mhm.
who's like, sorry I had to bow out, I was not feeling very well, anyway, talk to you
Right.
later.
I've been up for 3
Oh,
days.
no.
He just casually
That's
mentioned.
the most annoying. That's when I knew I hated Peter because he was like, oh, Peter, I got to talk to you tomorrow. And he's like, oh, I'm so tired. Just tell me now. And she's like, it's pretty important, so I want to do it in person. He's like,
Okay.
so you're playing games?
Right,
It's
right,
like,
right.
you told me. I can't have every conversation at your disposal. And so he's like,
and
I
then
just-
and then everything else Peter does makes you hate him because he's
Yeah.
the worst guy ever.
Piece of
that's
crap.
when it begins, but it does not end.
Yeah.
And so then the next day, yeah, the Miss Mac comes home, which I love. She's like the house, the den mother
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
sorority, where she, would pick, like, she keeps finding alcohol and that they.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like,
she has it
sherry.
stashed everywhere.
It's like not even
Well,
whiskey, it's sherry.
Do you think she has
Random.
stashed, or do you think she's just finding their stash?
No, I thought it was her having her own, like, because I assume you're not allowed to keep alcohol like per the rules
Yeah.
of the college, like. So I assume, but she's like, I'm not gonna let this stop me.
Yeah.
Um,
Sorry, ladies.
At one point, she finds some. alcohol, some cherry in the
In the
toilet,
toilet.
Yeah,
and
In
then
the
she
toilet.
restraint.
Like Kevin in the League with his treats. No, this is one of those scenes where if this was a modern horror movie, you would know exactly what would happen in that scene because she's literally staring at the bathroom
I
mirror,
know.
yeah,
keeps
I
moving
was
it,
waiting for
and then
that.
looking down, and you're like, he's gonna be right
Yeah.
behind her, but
Yeah.
no,
Never
nothing. But
happened.
you're like, oh man, it would be the music sting.
Mhm.
You'd see his like body and his arms like ready to
Right.
go. You
She
know?
even bends down
Yeah,
at one point
yeah,
and goes
exactly.
out of frame with the mirror and comes back up.
I
And you're just like,
know. I was like, come on, guys.
wow.
And it is filmed in that horror movie where you're just focused specifically on the mirror, so you keep expecting
No.
that.
But no, it takes another 30 minutes before something
I know,
like
I know.
happens.
And then it's funny because then that's when the dad comes and he's like, "Where's my daughter?" And then like there's like 3 minutes of hijinks between Miss Mac trying to hide like all the disgusting nudity that they
Yeah.
have in
And the
the
dad's
house.
just like, I didn't send my daughter here to pick up boys and drink. And Miss Mac is just like, what do you
Yeah.
want me to do, man? They're college girls.
Yeah, it's like, come on, man, it's a sorority.
Right.
I don't know if sororities had a different reputation in the 70s, but I assume that sororities and fraternities have always been like
Gotta be.
the party
Yeah.
boy
College in general
place to
has
be,
to, right?
you know.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I'm not familiar. Can I say too, the dad, that 70s like balding, but your hair is still blown
Right,
out.
right.
Like he's like Dr. Wily from Mega
Yeah.
Man. Perfect.
He looks-
Perfect haircut.
He looks like they don't make these kind of people in America anymore.
Right, right.
Yeah, like that guy does not exist
Yeah.
anymore.
Of his
Yeah.
time, yeah. And so as they're going, like they're looking for the girl, they go to the police. They try to get help, but the police is like, I don't know. We
We'll
don't know
look.
what's going- But they have a, and like one of the things is they established that a couple of nights ago, someone got, or one of the locals had gotten raped and murdered.
Mhm.
Or no, they had gotten raped, and then there's another girl who's missing. And so again, like I don't know if it was intentional commentary, but just this way that these girls are like, "Hey, here's a threat that's happening right now," and the cops are like, "Okay, boo, boo, boo,
Yeah,
boo, boo."
yeah.
Like,
We'll file that under
Yeah.
piece of shit.
and that's a great typewriter. And like I know, like until John Saxton comes in, he's portrayed as more like the intelligent police officer.
Yeah.
But they don't take it seriously, and so like the girls are kind of fending for themselves in a way.
Mhm.
And I think like that brings up the tension, but also it gives that realism of like, yeah, I mean, if and that might even signal to the reputation of sororities where they're just kind of dismissed a lot,
Right,
you know?
right.
Yeah, like whatever. She just ran off with a boy, and I thought that was and I assume because kind of what spurs the police into action isn't even really. It's that it's like a super young girl's like dead body was found in a park nearby,
Mhm.
right? And I assume that wasn't even supposed to be the same killer. It's just like, oh, just violence is so bad that
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm
though.
not sure how
Does
that
he
was wrote
say?
either.
One of the things about this movie is that they do not show the killer at any point. Like he's very hidden.
Yeah.
And so I think that's left up to ambiguity as to whether the killer did that or not. Because you see him walking, so you know he's kind of come from somewhere. But they don't ever like really draw a connection between the person who was murdered before and the killer. So, like, and again, if this had been a modern horror movie, he would have been like, "That's not what the girl in the park said." You know,
Right,
something
right.
to like.
Right,
But I
right.
like that it's not. I like that it kind of just adds to the world of violence that these people are
Yeah,
in, you know?
yeah.
Kind of like in Texas Chainsaw, where they kept playing the Vietnam news reports whenever Leatherface is like murdering someone.
Oh, yeah.
It just kind of gives.
Yeah, it's like society. So, and in the 70s and 80s, like the murders were like at their highest in like American like
Yeah,
modern
yeah.
society, you know. So,
Right.
yeah,
So it
it's
wasn't a
it's true. It's
sequel.
true. It's authentic to the time. Yeah.
And then like we spend a lot of time looking for the first girl who's been
Mhm.
murdered, and like they do even a police like they comb the park, and that's where they find the local finally because the mom had been looking for her. And like it's a good scene because when they find her, the dad is one of the first people who finds her, and like you see that like almost want to be excited about it, but then the mom comes right after and she's like freaking
Yeah.
out. And it's like that weird like he's happy that his daughter didn't get murdered, but he also recognizes that someone's
Right,
daughter did
Right.
get murdered.
There was a death.
And I think that's just another like really good scene that they
And
made.
then something else too, like whenever they're trying to get the police to start taking the crime seriously, like there's this one of the girls, I forget who it is, has a boyfriend who's kind of like this like all American guy, and he has sort of like that shaggy haircut, and like every time he enters a scene, all of a sudden like every male character who's in the scene, you can see like relax, and they're just like, finally, I'm talking to someone with some sense. And he's like the guy who comes into
Yeah,
the police station and is just like, you guys aren't actively investigating this sorority house. And then all of a sudden the cops are like, of course, young man, we will be getting to that. Don't you worry. And then like whenever he talks to like the missing
yeah,
girl's dad or Claire's dad, the Virgin's dad, then like whenever he walks in the room, like you can just see him just like visibly relaxed too. And like that was he was kind of like an
yeah,
interesting because he wasn't even like really a character. He doesn't like have that many lines. He's not integral to the
Yeah,
plot.
this was like because there's only three male characters in this who aren't police, and it's Peter, this guy, and then Claire's
Yeah.
dad. And I was like, okay, the killer has to be this guy or Peter because in modern horror that has to be the twist. Is like it's who you don't
Right.
suspect. But no, that guy you just don't really see him after.
Yeah.
Like he just doesn't
Nope.
come back.
and speaking on that, because I know at the beginning, once Claire disappears, there's like talk about like, because they know that guy's her boyfriend, but they're like, oh, but maybe he was going out with maybe she was going out with other
Hmm.
men, and like every time they do say that, the other girls are like, no, she was like a prude, she was like a virgin, like she wouldn't do that, and they like ignored. They keep bringing that up,
Yeah.
and then the boyfriend like gets mad. He's like, hey, shut up! Like when they say it in front of him, and it doesn't come
Right.
up again.
Right.
And
He's
it's like
spoken.
they needed the man to say that it was
Yeah.
done. And so I think that's another interesting kind of like a note in how they kind of
Hmm.
treat these two
Right.
people. And I think that's very good. Yeah. And then that's when the cops start getting involved. They start doing the search, and then we get to our second murder, which is Margot Kidder. Sadly, even though she's a
No, the second murder is the den mother.
Right.
oh,
Right.
that's right. 'cause
She
he's
gets
like,
hooked Home Alone
Yeah.
style.
Yeah.
yeah.
Also POV style.
And he's holding like the thing because she's like going up to the attic, and he's holding up like
A hook.
a big
Yeah.
hook that they have.
I guess
up
they do
there.
stage productions up there, or hanging carcasses for meat.
You're just waiting.
Yeah.
This is also funny because her whole thing is she's trying to find the cat who's like she can
Right.
hear the
Right.
cat,
That's what it was.
and
Yeah.
Stephanie, my paramour, hates when animals die in movies. So she looked up like, does the cat die in Black Christmas? And it's like, oh no, it doesn't. But it's also like you never really see it again.
Yeah, that's
So you
true.
don't really know
That's
what
true.
happens because it's never
Yeah.
mentioned again.
Yeah.
After the dead mother dies, people stop looking for it. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it can take care of itself.
I will say that in my movie, The Last Ones, we had to add a scene where we get rid of the dogs because they also disappeared
Oh,
for the
yeah.
rest of the movie, and I was like, oh yeah, you gotta have some kind of
Yeah,
scene.
they're alive.
yeah, you don't want Michael to have killed the
Right,
dogs or
right.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
And no one likes
Yeah.
that. I mean, she won't even watch Guardians 3 because she was like, oh, this trailer's too much animal cruelty
I know,
for me.
it's
right.
And she loves those first
I feel like
two
in movies and in books, people are worried about that, but then you play a video game, and it's just like some of your first enemies are like dogs.
Oh,
It's
blam,
just
blam,
some
blam,
slaughter
yeah.
dogs constantly.
I'm blowing
No
them
one says
away.
anything.
Yeah, every animal is the most annoying animal
I
in
know.
a video game because they're smaller. You just like want to kill them all.
I got a shovel and a dog. Bye.
But yeah. Oh, and then Jess goes with Peter, and she tells him that he's pregnant. He's like, "You're not getting a divorce, or you're not getting an abortion."
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he's like, you selfish bitch.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, it
He
is
says
him.
that she'll be
Yeah.
sorry if she does it. Like that's his like final word, and it's just like, whoa.
And then he's like, "Oh, because he has his like end of term recital is later that day," and he's like, "Why would you tell me this?" But it's like you're the one who forced this meeting,
Right,
Peter.
right.
You dumb dick.
Yeah, because he's like, oh, I'm not going to grad school. You and I are going to move in together over here. She's like, no.
We're gonna get
Yeah,
married.
yeah.
Yeah, she's like that. And well, because he's like, you can't talk about this like it's having a wart removed. And then the very next phone call, the guy is taunting her with that same language.
Mhm.
So it's like, oh, he was listening in.
Right.
but you're supposed to think it's Peter. you
Right,
know?
right,
Right. Peter's a little bit too much of a red herring in this one because he's such an
right,
asshole.
right. And it's like,
And then it's like just shots of him standing outside the house staring at the
oh my
house. You know,
God.
you're
Well,
like,
okay,
okay.
so he he like bombs his recital because he's thinking about
Mhm.
her, and then it cuts to him and he grabs like a big pole and he just destroys the
Very
piano.
like calculatedly, like coldly, like
Yeah.
that was a crazy scene. That was insane.
There's no emotion
Mhm.
in his face when he does it. It's just like cold.
Right. He's just like, I'm
hardness.
done with this part of my life. And like that's like his whole motivation for like the marriage all of a sudden. It's just like he bombed his shit. He's not gonna
Mhm.
be a musician. Or maybe he doesn't want to anymore. And so he just assumes that Olivia Hussey is just gonna like jump on board. And it's like so whenever she's like, no, dude, like I'm working on a lot of stuff here and I don't want a baby, I don't want marriage. I wanna go and do my thing. We don't really know what that thing is, but she's got something going on. And it's like I just like how many times did that conversation happen in real life back then? And probably still today.
Right.
Just like, no, dude, we're getting married,
Yeah.
we're gonna have this baby, and that's it. You're gonna be happy.
And I think it's an interesting dynamic because you can tell, and she makes it very apparent through her acting, but also through the script, is that Jess, once she got accidentally pregnant, she kind of realized that she's done with Peter, and she not only does she want to end the pregnancy, but she also wants to end the relationship. Like she's
Yeah.
over it, and like Peter is in good contrast to her because he never even asks her what she wants
Right.
to do. He asks her what she's going to do, and then he tells her what she's
Yeah.
going to do. But he's never like, oh, well, what are your thoughts about this? And I think like again, that's very telling as to his character and
Yeah.
what he's doing, and how he's trying to like
Mhm.
manipulate her. So again, he is such a
Totally.
good
Yeah.
asshole.
That was good. That was good. He did a good job. I also didn't realize that was the guy from 2001 either until I was reading the plot synopsis this morning or the production notes on Wikipedia, and I was like, because like I did know that I knew him from somewhere, but like that's the only other thing I've ever seen him in before, and he looks way different.
Yeah.
He was good.
Yeah, he looks very like, and he has very striking like blue eyes. So it.
And he has an
Yeah, just like
intensity
that.
about him.
Very like strong jaw, but like weirdly scrawny at the same time. Like just thinking, it was kind of like Mick Jagger a little bit. It was like a Rolling Stone.
He legit looks
Yeah.
like an astronaut.
Yeah.
So then finally the cops start taking him seriously, and so they send someone to like be outside the house, and they're like, see, it'll be fine. And then they also decide that they're gonna put they're trying to get a tap on the phone.
Right.
And that again, this is very interesting because we see the cops doing the tap, and we're realizing that like back in the 70s, you literally had to follow a
Dude,
line
that place was crazy.
to go to the other side and then literally tap into
Right.
the phone line and listen to the conversation.
That
why
was
they
like, I
time.
wonder, I mean, I kind of wonder, it's like, was that technology super new at the time and they wanted to be like, oh, look
How
at
amazing
like
this is.
what they're
Yeah.
like using. Like, yeah, this is incredible. When you're like, oh, this seems like
Dude,
such a
yeah,
hassle.
that must be the hardest job ever. You need like 10 guys doing that job, not just one, not just Bill Graham.
I know. And I think that kind of goes back to them shooting drama, because like you would want that in a drama, like showing how hard it is to catch
Yeah.
this guy. But in a horror film, you're like, well, we don't care if they tap the phone or not. Like, we just need to get to that last twist.
Yeah.
But here, I think like that's kind of, but I think it works really well because like I was super interested. At first, I thought they were just in a warehouse and they were just faking it. But then, like, they're walking through like the columns of the phone.
Right.
And I was like,
That'd
oh
be the
my
most
God, that
expensive
sounds-
Yeah, that probably was
Yeah.
the actual switchboard.
Yeah, that was actually like a really weird look at
But
tech for sure. Like I never knew what that looked like at all, and that was like, whoa, that was
Yeah.
kind of striking.
Yeah, and I think like there's a lot of talk in movies now where they're like, oh, if you do this, you date the movie immediately, and like kind of saying it as a negative. But I think like stuff like this, sometimes you want to date your movie. You want to show what it was like back then and kind of capture
Right.
that time, even if you're telling a
Yeah.
horror movie, you know. And so I always think that that's kind of funny. Like, yeah, sometimes you don't want to date it, or you want to kind of like make it timeless, but sometimes you do want to date it. You want to show
Right,
what it's
right.
like. to do this movie.
I also feel like it's focused on realism in a way most modern like cop like TV shows and dramas aren't, where it's like now it's like zoom
Right,
enhance, and it's
right.
like that's not real. You can't zoom in on like a 7-Eleven security
Like enemy at
camera.
the
You know,
stake
it's
or
like
something like
so
that.
they don't even
Yeah.
care anymore. Whereas this movie's like, no, we're gonna show you exactly like how this works and how like
Right.
long
How
it
kind of
takes and
wonky it
annoying
is.
it is.
Yeah.
You know, so it's almost like an entirely
Yeah.
different mindset. You know.
Yeah, and it's and like there's a cool part because like they kind of this is one of the only movies where they're being stalked by a serial killer. The cops are involved, but like the cops are it's like a mix between being incompetent but also like not knowing how to deal with the
Yeah.
situation. Because there's a scene where carolers come to the door and they
Oh,
like
yeah.
sing to
That was a good
sing
scene.
to Jess and they're like singing to her and then that Barb, like the killer breaks into Barb's room and she's been sleeping and he stabs her, but like we're drowned out. But you think about it, there's a cop outside. The cop should have been like, "Hey, no carolers
Right.
tonight." Like there's a very real
Right.
threat. Even if I don't think the killers are the killers, probably don't want a bunch of children in front of a
Yeah.
house that there might
Yeah.
have a psycho.
Some kind of violence going on. But once again, like during like
Yeah,
a gross scene, like he did that close up on the faces of like the carolers again while the murder is happening, like off
Mhm.
screen, and also like the way that like Barb gets stabbed with a unicorn glass statue, and like the way they shoot the blood falling off of
Yeah.
like the statue, and like it was kind of like psycho a little bit, like with Barb's face, like that was just a really good death scene. Like that was like so creepy and
It has
giallo-ish, and it
one.
was great. It was cool.
Yeah, it has one of the most iconic stances where he like has his hands over his head to stab her, and you can only see his
Yeah.
eye, and like it's a guy, but I think it's even on the poster, but like it's such a striking image how little of this
Just like
guy
his
we
amber
see,
eye.
and I think like now,
Yeah.
yeah, you look at movies now, and they like have to tell
Mhm.
you who they are, and I think like it's kind of cool that we never really know, like not to spoil it, but yeah, you never find
Yeah.
out who Billy was.
Yeah.
He's just some guy, yeah.
And then I do think it's cool because right after the carolers leave, they like walk by a tree, and then Peter walks out of the
Right.
tree,
Right.
and it's like, really, why are you scarier than Billy, who's literally
Yeah.
murdering people?
And this is very funny too because very shortly after this, they're like, let's check in on the cop watching the house.
Mhm.
And then it cuts to that cop having his throat
Oh,
slit.
yeah.
And you're like, wait, so Peter was outside the whole time and just missed this? Because Peter's just totally useless, even like when he should like be acting on information.
He was just trying to plan his life with Jess so hard he
Yeah,
didn't even notice. So he's so pro life.
he was like,
He's obsessed.
and so then like there's the biggest. It's probably what the movie's most known for because they eventually they're tapping the phone and they finally figure it out, and that's when they're like the call's coming from inside the house, like get out of the house. And I think it's even smart because the cops like just tell her to leave, don't tell her why, like get her out of
Right.
the house, and then the cop is like, hey, can you take some steps outside? And Jess is like, why? And he's like, no reason, just
Yeah.
go walk straight outside and don't turn
Run
around.
as
And
fast
then
as you
she's
fucking
like,
can.
oh well, let me get my friends. And he's like, no, don't get him, just go outside. And she's like, okay, well let me get. And he's like, no,
Right. You don't have
killer's
friends in the
there.
house.
Get the fuck
No one that's alive.
Is this is this the first the calls? Is this where it comes from? The calls coming from inside the house.
I don't know if it. I don't know if it came from this first or that urban legend where they're like the call was coming from inside the house came first. It could also just be one of those pop culture things where it became an urban legend based on a movie. You know?
Like Sweet Summer Child.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I mean that'd be interesting
Yeah,
to find
honestly.
out. I think we don't have
no research done.
I know we did no research, so person watching this, look it up and then
Right.
email Andrew.
You'll be world famous. We'll put you on the show.
This is like, because then she goes up and then it's like at this point he's killed everyone else in the house.
Yeah.
And then it becomes kind of a back and forth chase scene.
Yeah.
And this is where Peter is at his most insane.
And because then she goes downstairs and she's hiding from Billy. He calls himself Billy, but we don't know if that's his real name.
She locks herself in the basement.
And Peter, and he sees her and he's like, "Hey, just come out here." And then he doesn't know if she's in the basement or not, and so he breaks the window.
Before he breaks the window, though, like when he's walking by the windows,
I was like,
that is the scariest looking window I've ever seen. Like it looked like the monster from Annihilation, like just like creeping through. It's just like you're not a
Yeah.
human being,
Yeah.
man. Like this is messed up.
But like the fact that he's not the killer and he's just like, Jess, where are you, Jess? And he's like breaking through windows. You're like, okay, this guy was gonna kill someone
Yeah.
eventually.
Yeah.
Like, you know, this is ridiculous.
And I
So-
do think that that's an interesting, like the two antagonists both kind of want what they want from women, and they're trying to take it regardless. And I think like kind of makes that juxtaposition interesting, because it's like he's doing what the killer is doing. He's just doing it in like a more, not to be too current, but it's like something recently happened where CEO
Yeah.
was murdered, and it's like if you murder a CEO, you know, you're instantly hunted down by every police
Right.
officer in New England. But if you're a CEO and you deny 1 million people's claims,
Yeah.
you're given a yearly bonus. And it's kind of the same thing where like they're showing how ugly the worst type of men can be, but they're also
Right.
showing us how ugly just
Right,
a normal
right.
guy who's like a good college, he has prospects, going to grad school, like how
Yeah.
ugly they can be. And I think again, like I don't think it was an intentional aspect of it. I mean, it wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna send everyone a message, but I do think it was, the message was clear. In
Yeah,
that
even if it's just a
kind of
reflection of
movie,
the
you know?
times, it's still a
Oh, yeah.
reflection of the times, for sure. Yeah.
Exactly. And again, that's why it's important to sometimes you want to set it where
Yeah.
it's set, you know, and have it be part of that. I know that Bob Clark wanted, one of the things is that he encouraged improvisation, and he really wanted to kind of give a realistic view of what living in college was like before you know,
Yeah.
people got murdered. To show that, like, you know, they're adults. They're just like
Yeah,
younger.
right. Yeah, they're getting into the real world for the first time. Yeah, and seeing like how disgusting it can be, for
And
sure.
so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a realism to it. Yeah.
So then Peter and her fight, and then so I would say watch it. I'm gonna get into a little bit of spoilers, just kind of want to talk about the end, but I don't want to spoil it now. So if you haven't seen it, go check it out. And then I'll talk a little bit more about the remakes, but
Yeah.
don't check out the remakes.
Are they bad? I've never.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess get into it after.
But then, so at the very end, the cops finally get in there, and Peter's been killed by, Jess has killed Peter, and they're like, "Oh, he was the killer, of course."
She
'Cause
beat him
Right,
to death with a
right.
fire poker.
Yeah, they're like, "Well, obviously he's the killer." So then they put Jess to bed, and then they're like, "All right, let's all go," and then they leave, and then the old man faints, so they take him to the ambulance, and then you find out that Billy is still upstairs, and the phone starts
Yeah.
to ring, and the movie ends.
Oh, and no, and it's the cop standing at watch outside, looks back at the phone ringing, but ignores it. So it's like, oh, the cop. Although I do feel like they would catch Billy like at some point
Yeah,
pretty shortly
eventually,
after
yeah, I
this,
think they
because they'd be
would.
like, oh,
Right.
the guy's still killing people in this house, you know?
I will say that I'm not a huge fan of that ending, just because so much of the
Mhm.
movie is realistic that when they're like, everyone is clearing out, A, it becomes a little bit too cliche because you know it's exactly what's
Right.
about to happen. And B, you would not leave a murder victim alone, or like an attempted
Yeah.
You would take her
You
to
would
the
just put her in
hospital
bed.
too,
No.
yeah.
in the crime scene where you also have 3 other bodies, that
Right.
you have-
Which you haven't even
Yeah,
searched
okay.
the rest of the
Yeah.
house, you know? Like that guy's
Right.
daughter's still missing.
yeah,
It's like, we're not going to
He's
look
just gonna
around.
see.
We're not going to find the
Right.
phone he
Any
called
evidence
from.
at all.
like I do think that it's like, it's a cool ending and that it's chilling, but I also think like so much of the movie's realistic that part is just
Yeah,
kinda like,
it's a lot of plot holes all
Yeah.
of a sudden. It's just like, wait a second, okay.
Yeah, you're very like, I know the police are bad, but
Yeah,
they
this is-
really messed
It's
this one up.
despicable. Yeah.
it'd have to be really bad. Yeah,
Well, hold on. Didn't they? So
but I think that's the only.
the remake that we watched last year, I think they go into who the villain is,
Mhm.
right?
Yes, and that can be confusing if you, because like me, I watched
Same.
the remake first and then I watched the original. So I thought that they were gonna I thought that they were gonna like explain some of this, or there was gonna be more hints. And in the remake, Billy is now like a kid who had like that disease that makes him
Yeah.
yellow for some reason, and Agnes is his, because in
Jaundice.
in this movie, he keeps asking for Agnes. He's like, Agnes,
Yeah.
can you come to the phone? And in the remake, Agnes is now his sister, who they eventually team up and like do a bunch of weird
It was
shit.
crazy.
Oh, that
But
sounds
Yeah,
none of
I was
bad.
that is
waiting for that to
this
happen
movie.
in this one. I've only seen the remake too, and I was watching with Leslie, and Leslie was like, "Wait, so who's the killer gonna be?" And I was like, "Well, I think I know, but do you want me to tell you?" And she was like, "I guess." And I was like, "I think it's like a psycho who lives upstairs, and he's like reliving his like family trauma." And then that just didn't happen, and I was like, "I must be just fucking wrong. Like, where did I make that up?"
I mean, it could
Yeah,
be that.
it could be for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
And it's not even like, because in the original Texas Chainsaw, they don't necessarily say they're cannibals. They just kind of allude to it a bunch. In this one, so you'd be like, in the remake where they make it very clear they're cannibals, it's like, well, I know where they got that from. When you go Black Christmas to Black Christmas, you're like, what are you
Right.
guys talking about? Like, where
Yeah,
did you get any of this?
it's like that's a lot of liberties.
And then if you think that's bad, so there's a 2019 Black Christmas that just came out. And in that movie, there is no Billy, there is no Agnes, there's not even phone calls. It's instead of cult of men who like want to embarrass the women, and then they've been killing them. But then also every time they kill a woman, they get better powers, and so that's why
What?
they're all successful men, because they sacrifice
Just
sorority to
What?
get corporate
You know,
power.
I could see oh,
right. I see the
men will do
metaphor. I
anything to
see
get
it.
ahead, and women are like, I get that's not a bad metaphor
How the world works.
for. I mean,
Yeah.
it sounds bad the way you're describing it, but
The movie isn't also very good, but I do think like if you have like, and it's funny because this one, it's a very realistic Christmas house. Like there's
Mhm.
lights, of course, there's a tree, everyone has like some kind of Christmas, but it's not over the top. In the second one, Billy literally turns his mom into Christmas cookies that he's eating
yeah.
when the
Oh
cops
my
come.
gosh. The second one's
And
crazy.
in the third one, it's not even Christmas. Like you can't even, if they didn't tell you it was
Oh,
Christmas,
wow.
you would not know.
Yeah.
They do like one skit, and so it's interesting to see like what people would make of a movie
Yeah,
called Black
yeah.
Christmas. And
That's so funny. I forgot so much about the remake.
yeah,
I was reading about the Wikipedia, and there was also a fan film called "It's Me, Billy," released in
perfect.
2021, and it's one of those like, we're making a direct sequel to the original, and it's following the granddaughter of Jess, even though she didn't have kids.
Well,
That's
we never
a
know.
part
We
of
never
them.
see
Well,
what
maybe
she
I guess
does.
she could have. Maybe she lived.
Yeah, after
She
all
didn't
that.
have the abortion. 50 years later, I'm like, wait, so Billy's like 80?
Right.
He's not coming up and down those attic stairs.
yeah, a little. Also, I do want to add, Josh, if you're ever at the point where I'm like, oh, let me tell you about this fan film.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe
Take him out to a
Hey,
pasture.
they thought it was important enough to include on
Take him out to the
Wikipedia,
Dungeons of
so
As the maker of other fan films, yeah, don't put me in
Yeah.
conversations with the real movie. But yeah, I do think, and I think that's, it's also funny that Black Christmas was also apparently the first of these classic movies to get a legacy sequel, even if it was
Yeah.
a fan film. It's like, yeah, they just breaking all the trails,
right.
But yeah, I think this one's good just because of how, like, and you can almost compare it to Texas Chainsaw, where Texas Chainsaw is saying something very specific about violence in the media, and then the remake is just kind of like, oh, what if we took all that nuance
Yeah,
out
just
and
went balls
just
to
made
the
it a
wall.
horror film?
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like, yeah, like 2006 Black Christmas kind of feels like that, where they're like, oh, of course Billy would be even crazier, and he's eating cookies that are made of his
100%.
See, to me, the movie you're describing, which I haven't seen, makes it sound like that the Rob Zombie Halloween, where you see him as a sad kid who didn't get to go trick or treating.
Yeah.
And you're like,
I mean, you're very close.
Yeah,
it does
totally,
have Rob Zombie
totally.
vibes first.
Yeah.
It has some impressive kills.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun, but it's like this one's like a legit like thinker. Like you want to think of the themes and the characters, and that one's just like if you want to have fun, like watching a Christmas.
Right.
horror
I thought this
movie
movie was going to be
with
silly based on the
friends.
remake. I thought it was going to be just kind of like a whatever slasher.
No, it's
yeah.
It's not
And I was
fun
like-
at all. It's yeah.
Yeah.
It's very dark. And now I do have to say, because Josh started it, that there is also a "It's
Oh
Me,
wow.
Billy" chapter 2.
Billy never stops. Yeah. You
So
have
you could watch
content
both
until
of
New
those right
Year's,
now.
people.
They're both online.
Yeah,
You
you can
you
watch
could
them
just
all.
Yeah.
be you could learn Billy's whole life, his
How to
whole entire
sacrifice something.
life.
Yeah. Also, I feel like if you're gonna make a sequel to Black Christmas, even if it's a fan film, you're not gonna do a pun for Christmas. Like you could have done
Yeah.
Silent Night, could have done Billy's Comes to Town, something. Like
Yeah.
give me
Yeah.
something, guys. Billy the Snowman, like anything. You could have. There's so many. Like, play
Jingle
with a
Kills.
Christmas
That's
story.
a
I
good
don't
one.
know.
You know,
Very
since this
Snowy
is
that is.
Yeah.
You
since
made
this
me
is
go for
coming
me.
out before this is coming out on Christmas Eve, right?
Yes.
And you know how our podcast is about finding the good in forgotten movies?
Mhm.
My reverse is for Bob Clark. I don't care for A Christmas Story. I know it's like the biggest
Not your
Christmas
thing.
movie ever. Don't love it. Too mean spirited, just like this movie.
See, I kind of feel if
Not
I'm gonna do a quick review of A Christmas Story, I think like much like this one, that's kind of the point. Like I think it's charming in the fact that like the family isn't perfect,
Yeah.
but they still feel realistic. Like they're not the Griswolds, everything goes wrong, but they are the family where like they're gonna say
Yeah.
fuck if the
Right.
bolts
Right.
like fly off the car. You know? Like
yeah,
them
but like
getting
when he goes to see Santa,
Or the
Santa's so
elves.
mean to
They
him
just
for
kick
no
him down the
reason.
slide.
yeah.
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 Come on, kid. His thing is like always.
And the bully is so mean.
See, it's just like
I think like you get that from the fact that like when you're a kid, Santa does seem kind of scary because he's like you're. That's like one of the only times that you're
Right.
by yourself
On
with
their
a
lap.
strange adult
Yeah.
that you've never met. And on their lap, yeah. And so you know it's Santa, but it's also kind of like,
Right.
who am I talking to? Like, where's my mom? You know. And so I think that and like yeah, the bully being mean or like them being stupid
Right.
enough
And
to
they just
like
leave him out
lick a
there, and he's
pole
just
in
like
the
sitting
middle of
there in the
winter.
cold.
Yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't give me warm Christmas vibes.
It's
It gives
a
me like,
savage
yeah,
film,
life is
absolutely.
terrible vibes.
But I
I
like
think like the funniest part is where the whole movie is like, oh, you'll blow your eye out, kid, and then the first shot he
Yeah.
makes, like it shoots his eye back. And it's
That's how
like,
it goes.
yeah, that's what would happen. Like, there's so many times when you're a kid, you're like, Mom, can we do this? And they're like, no, it's dangerous. You're like,
Right.
it's gonna be fine. I'm not
Yeah,
gonna get hurt. And
yeah.
then your arm breaks.
Man,
You're
I wanted to,
instantly hurt. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that is true. I don't
Right,
disagree. I see what it's going for, but you know, it
was
never comes
charming.
around for me to be like, yeah, there is something special. You know, I'm like, no,
right.
I do hate life
Thanks for
and
the
being around my
confirmation.
family during
Yeah.
the holidays. You're right, I guess. Kill me, I guess.
I don't ever get that they hate being around each other. I think it's more like they kind of get annoyed with
Yeah.
the stuff that's happening, you know.
I'm just saying, if you're not going to give Krampus marks for the family never coming together, don't
Well,
get.
the family in Krampus is not realistic is the problem. It's not so much that they're mean, it's that they
Right.
suck
To each other. To the
as
world.
characters.
Everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like that's a very slippery slope, and maybe that's what it is that for Josh, they're too unrealistic to work. And for me, they work fine because
Yeah.
I've met people like that. So I'm like, yeah, the people are always
Yeah.
negative, but then they all come together at the end.
Yeah, that's fair.
And so, but like that's
Yeah.
writing jerks is
Mhm.
very hard because you go too far and there's no likability, there's no redeeming qualities. Like Peter in this, because by the end you find out Peter was
Right,
innocent,
yeah,
but
you
like
don't feel
nobody's
bad.
sad that Peter
Yeah.
died.
Yeah, you're like fuck him. He was
Yeah.
like a proto incel for sure.
I
Yeah.
hate Peter so much that I'm on
I know.
Hal's
Yeah.
side
Kick that
now in
motherfucker in his
2001.
face. Send him to whatever dimension you want.
Like, no, don't open the pod bay doors,
Yeah.
Hal. He's always trying to tell people what to
Freaking
do.
control freak.
I think it's fun. I think it's yeah, it's kind of these movies where you're not I think that's cool about watching these old movies. Like when I saw the first Texas Chainsaw, I was not expecting it to be that, like, to feel
Yeah.
that documentary and that real. And so it scared the shit. And like kind of the same thing with this, you know, you go from watching the remake, which is silly, and then you go to watch this one and you're like, oh, this is a real
Yeah.
Like they're talking about some real stuff in here. There's real kills and
Totally.
it's scary and there's tension all the time. So I think like that's always why you want to kind of watch the original, see
Mhm.
why it's
Yeah,
good
I
of
would
a
say this
remake,
movie
you
and
know?
Texas Chainsaw
Yeah.
are the two 70s horror movies that like genuinely scare me. Like a lot of times it's like,
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the phone calls are enough to just be, and there's also just like we didn't really talk about this, but at the end, um, and even though like the ending logically doesn't work, when all the cops leave and the camera starts moving and you think it's the killer's POV and it's not, but you kind of realize it's like kind of going towards the attic, that it's like it doesn't matter that it's not literally the killer's POV because the killer and the camera have become
Totally.
one in the
Right.
end, where
Yeah.
you're like, oh, this is like genuinely like a kind of like haunting like
yeah,
thing to do in your movie.
For
I don't
sure.
know. It's just very unsettling. I wouldn't watch it around Christmas because it will make you feel bad.
I know that
You're
is
like,
the funny thing. That is the funny thing about this, because when I suggested this last week, I was
Yeah.
like, well, it doesn't really feel like a Christmas movie. It's like
Right,
it's
right.
literally called Black Christmas.
well, yeah, but like it's just more the setting is like here's a setting where not a lot of people would be around
Yeah.
for the holidays, you know. So it's like it's almost like the holdovers,
Yeah.
but it makes you want to die.
But the other way, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would recommend it, guys. Any last thoughts?
Watch it on
Black
December 23rd
Christmas?
for sure. Yesterday. Watch this movie yesterday. You listened to this on the 24th. Yeah.
Have watched it before you saw this.
This would be a good movie to watch on the last thing of
Yeah,
Halloween
this is
to
the
get
new
ready for
Krampus.
Christmas.
Yeah.
Set a reminder on your phone to do it on November 1st.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's
That'll
a
be
legit
your-
piece of horror
That'll be
your
history for sure.
transition.
Even just a good movie in general, not even just as horror history. 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting as a movie. It's interesting to see how slashers were made back then. It's interesting to see how many tropes it created just through that one thing. I mean, we mentioned Scream. Scream would not have been made if
Yeah.
Black Christmas didn't start the phone thing. You know, like it's that kind of so. But yeah, I think it's interesting for a lot of different ways. The acting's great. You also get to see like some of these actors, like Margot Kidder. She didn't do a lot of roles, so it's kind of funny to see her in this one. And then of course Peter.
Yeah, Olivia
Peter, my
Hussey from
friend
Romeo
from
and Juliet.
2001.
Did you guys watch that in school?
But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. Which
Yeah.
everyone had to watch in school at one point.
My final word on it for Christmas. Watch The Empty Space on Tubi. Give Andrew Hara a Christmas present.
Yeah, give me a special Christmas gift.
Yeah.
Watch it about 30 times
Yeah.
so he gets
Give all your
$2
friends
from
and family a
Tubi.
Tubi
Yeah.
gift card. Watch all the free films.
You would all have to watch it
Come on.
20 times for me to get $2 from you. But I
We
believe
can do
in
it. We
all
can do it.
13,000 of you to do it. Oh, and speaking of, I will say one piece of trivia, because we're doing clips now instead of trivia. But apparently, Steve Martin met Olivia Hussey and was like, "This is you're in one of my favorite movies," and she was like, "Romeo and Juliet." And he's like, "No, Black Christmas."
Nice.
I saw that movie 27 times.
She's gonna get $2 from Tubi.
Damn, Steve Martin, what the hell? This is unrelated. Maybe this is a sneak preview of what we cover next year. But Steve Martin was originally offered the role of Tom Cruise in Eyes Wide Shut, and he took the role. He just had to stop acting by the time Kubrick.
That would've been crazy.
He was way older.
That would have been sick because of Spanish Prisoner. You know,
Yeah.
he could do like real roles.
Well, yeah, Steve Martin's super smart, but it would have been
Yeah.
very interesting to see him in
Very, very different tone. Who would do you know the woman would have been? I'm
Inexplicably
curious.
still.
No, they didn't say.
Oh.
Yeah.
He's ageless. But cool, guys. Next week we'll talk. I don't know what we're gonna talk next week, but New Year we're gonna have our end of the year wrap up where we talk new movies and we get a little bit more harsh than normal. So come join us in that, and then probably other stuff that'll be fun. But yeah, we'll see you guys next year. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for liking. Thanks for pitching in on all their stuff. Thanks for watching the movies if you have. And now go watch Black Christmas and have some Christmas time treats as your parents get mad at you for putting
Show
on
him
this
who's boss.
movie.
Tell him why your mom should
Hello,
listen
what
to
the hell?
Peter. Just kidding. No one's mom should listen to Peter.
Exactly. But, cool. Well, have Merry Christmas, guys, and we'll see you next time.